If you're anything like me, you don't like to throw this stuff away because even the smallest piece of oak, walnut, maple seems like a waste. And I'm always looking for ways to turn it into something new and beautiful. Today, we're going to learn how to take those scraps that might otherwise end up in the burn pile and turn them into a beautiful gift that can be given away or that you might actually make some money off of. In addition, it's a great way to build your woodworking skills and requires no special equipment other than basic tools that would be found in a typical woodworking shop. In fact, for this project, all we're going to need is a table saw, some glue, and a few clamps. So if you're excited about becoming a better woodworker and creating unique, one-of-a-kind gifts for your friends, loved ones, and customers, then stick around and watch. All that we're going to need for this project are a couple of scraps. I'm using some walnut and maple that are just some leftovers. The walnut is resawn, so it's only about 1/4 of an inch thick. Now, to start off with, I'm going to take this piece of walnut and cut it down into strips. Now, this is way more than I would actually need for this project, so I could actually probably make 2 or 3 of these candle holders with this one piece of walnut right here. I'm cutting them down to 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to go in 2.5 inches because that's where I would like the little tic-tac-toe design to intersect. So I'm going to mark each one of those. And once I'm done there, I'm going to take it over to the table saw where I'm going to create a dado so they will cross over and connect together. Now, if you do this perfectly, then there's really not even need to glue it up. You can take them apart. My finished product ended up being a little bit loose, so I'm going to need to tweak that a little bit to get it a little bit tighter. Now I'm just using the table saw to cut out this dado. If you wanted to use a router, you could, but with something this thin, I really think that a table sled on your table saw is the way to go. You can get it nice and clean, and it doesn't take much time at all. I use a stop block right here to make sure that I'm able to get consistent cuts every single time. Now I'm going to glue these together. As I said, if you get the dados nice and snug, you really won't even have to do a glue up. This was my first attempt at doing this, so they left a little bit to be desired. When you're talking about something this thin, 1/4 of an inch, it's very easy for one little bit of slip up to make your dados too wide. But I'll glue it up, nobody will ever know. This is a great way to work on your woodworking skills by creating those dados and try to get them as snug as possible. From there, I'm just going to take this leftover piece of maple and cut it down. Now I'm cutting it down to the size of the walnut resawed portion that I already had, and I'm going to glue these up together. And once again, there's no right or wrong when you're making something out of scraps. Just let the wood speak for you and create something that you think looks good. I saw a design similar to this online, and I had these pieces of wood lying around, so I thought that I'd create it just like that. Now we're going to glue it up and let it sit up for a couple of hours. And this is going to become the actual candle holders themselves. And again, once again, these pieces are big enough. I could probably make 2 or 3 candle holders out of this material. Through the magic of time lapse, let's fast forward, and the glue has dried. So let's take it out and then cut it down. Then I'm going to take it over to my table saw and rip it down to size. Now I want each of these candle holders to be 2 inches by 2 inches. So I'm going to set up my table saw and go ahead and cut those down. The actual candles that I'll be using are tea light candles that are 1 inch in diameter. So that makes them small enough to fit inside and still has a little extra room. From there, I'm going to mark the midway point because I'm going to put another dado lengthwise through this piece so that these candle holders will actually sit on top of the frame that I'd already created. And just as I did before, I want these dados to be 1/4 of an inch wide. So I'm going to get the outside edges, and then I'm going to go back through the middle and clean out any of that inside. Now you'll see this piece right here is chipped, no big deal. that's just going to be an offcut because the majority of the underside there is just fine. Now you can always check to see if the width is good by taking a little scrap piece of your frame and fitting it in there. If it's not, just ooch it over just a little bit, sneak up on it to get the proper width. It's always best to do each one at the same time, so all 4 of your candle holders will have the exact same width and they should fit very snug. From there, now I'm going to use my crosscut sled so that I can do the exact same thing on the other side, because the underside of these candle holders will be a cross shape that will sit on top of the frame. And once again, always cut it a little bit shallow, because if it's not quite wide enough, you can always sneak up on it. If you cut it too wide, there's no going back. If you do a good job with all of your dados, then you can actually piece these together without using any kind of glue. If you get your dados nice and snug, then you can actually assemble your finished candle holder without any glue whatsoever. And that's really what I'm going for when I make these. Once we have our cross section done, then we are going to cut each one into 2-inch sections. Now, I just made one, but if I were making multiple of these, which is easy enough to do, you just need to cut it into multiple 2-inch sections each. Once we have everything cut to size, then I'll just use my small hand plane and clean up some of those edges and break them. You could just sand them down, but I like using this plane every once in a while. And because of the fact that I didn't get my frame perfectly flat, I am going to use that plane to try to even everything up and get both sides of the tic-tac-toe board to be perfectly flat and even, so that the candle holders will sit on top very snug. Once we have our pieces cut, let's assemble. You'll see that at least one of these is a little bit loose, but I know a little bit better how to do it now. So from now on, I'll make them a little bit more snug, and they should fit very snug. Now that the dry fit's done, let's mark the center point. Then take them over to the drill press and put a 1-inch hole in there using a 1-inch Forstner bit. And the final step is to just dip it in a little mineral oil to give it a nice finished look. I love mineral oil with walnut especially. So if you enjoyed this type of content, I would appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button below, because one thing that I'm going to start doing more and more is creating simple, unique projects that you don't see every day, many of which are made out of scraps and require little to no tools to help you become a better woodworker.